I never wanted to live in a neighborhood with an HOA. My parents had horror stories from their time in one back in the 90s. But when my wife Sarah and I found the perfect colonial-style home in Pinewood Estates last year, I convinced myself things would be different. The neighborhood was pristine, manicured lawns, coordinated mailboxes, and not a single garden gnome in sight. The listing agent assured us the HOA was reasonable and just there to maintain property values. The first few weeks were blissful. We painted our living room, installed new kitchen countertops, and finally had space for our growing collection of houseplants. Our neighbors seemed pleasant enough, mostly retired couples and a few young families like us. I even thought I'd made a friend in Tom, the guy next door, who helped me move a couch inside. Then came the letter. A crisp white envelope with Pinewood Estates Homeowners Association, printed in bold across the top. Inside was a notice informing us that our trash cans had been visible from the street for more than 12 hours after collection day, a violation of neighborhood bylaws. The $50 fine seemed excessive, but I paid it, not wanting to rock the boat. At the monthly HOA meeting, attendance mandatory, another fact the listing agent conveniently omitted, I got my first glimpse of Patricia Hollister, mid-60s, meticulously highlighted blonde hair, perpetually pursed lips, and a voice that could cut glass. As HOA president, she ran the meeting with military precision, shooting down suggestions and concerns from homeowners with practiced efficiency. The Millers at 423 have requested permission to install solar panels, she announced, scanning a sheet of paper through reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. Request denied, as it would disrupt the uniform aesthetic of the neighborhood. When a young couple asked about changing the rule prohibiting basketball hoops, Patricia fixed them with a steely gaze. Rules exist for a reason. If we make one exception, soon Pinewood Estates will look like, she visibly shuddered, a public park. As the meeting concluded, Patricia approached me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Reynolds, welcome to Pinewood. I noticed your garage door was open past 9 p.m. last Tuesday. Just a friendly reminder that all exterior doors should be closed by sundown." I nodded, feeling the first prickle of unease. What had we gotten ourselves into? The final red flag came when my grandmother called, announcing she wanted to visit for a few weeks. Nana was 80, fiercely independent, and had recently gotten her concealed carry permit after a break-in at her senior living facility. Just for protection, she told me. These old bones can't run, but they can still pull a trigger. Little did I know, Nana's visit would coincide with Patricia's reign of terror reaching new heights and become the catalyst for the most explosive neighborhood showdown Pinewood Estates had ever seen. 3 weeks after moving in, the citations began arriving with alarming frequency. A $75 fine for grass half an inch too tall. A warning about our mailbox being insufficiently polished. A violation notice because Sarah's gardening gloves had been left on our porch railing overnight. I tried reasoning with Patricia, armed with a folder of before and after photos of our meticulous lawn maintenance. "Mrs. Hollister, there must be some mistake. We've been measuring our grass twice weekly," I explained, showing her photographic evidence. Patricia barely glanced at my documentation. "Our landscaping committee uses professional-grade equipment, Mr. Reynolds. Your household measuring tape," she wrinkled her nose, "is hardly accurate." When I pointed out that our neighbors' lawns appeared identical to ours, Patricia's smile tightened. "We don't discuss other homeowners' compliance status. That would be a privacy violation." The real trouble started when my grandmother arrived. Nana pulled into our driveway in her ancient but immaculately maintained 1975 Cadillac Eldorado, a magnificent battleship blue beast with chrome details that gleamed in the sunlight. The car was her pride and joy, purchased new by my late grandfather and maintained with religious devotion. That vehicle cannot remain visible. Patricia appeared at our door within hours of Nana's arrival. Pinewood Bylaw 17.3 clearly states that no vehicle manufactured before 1990 may be parked in driveways or streets. It's an eyesore. "It's a classic car," I argued. "It's worth more than most new vehicles on this street." Patricia's face remained impassive. The bylaws don't make exceptions for classic status. It goes in your garage or off the property by tomorrow. Our two-car garage already housed both our vehicles. Where exactly am I supposed to put it? That's not the HOA's concern, Patricia replied. You have 24 hours before it's towed at your expense. When I relayed this to Nana, her eyes narrowed dangerously. That woman needs to learn about respect, she muttered, and property rights. That evening, Tom from next door came over with a warning. Watch yourself with Patricia, he said quietly. Last year, the Hendersons questioned her about HOA financials. Their water heater mysteriously sprung a leak the next day while they were out of town. No one could prove anything, but... Are you saying she's vindictive? Tom laughed humorlessly. Patricia doesn't get mad. She gets even, and her husband Dennis is on the local police force. They've got this neighborhood locked down tight. As if to prove his point, the next morning brought a new violation notice for unauthorized gatherings because we'd had Tom over for coffee. Sarah was reaching her breaking point. This is insane. We can't even have a neighbor over for coffee now. What she didn't know was that Patricia was just warming up. The situation deteriorated rapidly over the next 2 weeks. Every morning brought a new violation notice, each more absurd than the last. Our wind chimes were creating excessive noise pollution. The bird feeder Sarah installed attracted unsanctioned wildlife. The welcome mat was non-regulation size. My personal favorite was the citation for improper window covering visibility consistency. Apparently, our blinds weren't all closed to exactly the same height. Each violation came with fines ranging from $50 to $200. We were hemorrhaging money, and when I attempted to contest the charges at the next HOA meeting, Patricia ruled me out of order and had me removed by Dennis, who attended in his police uniform despite being off duty. Nana was furious. In my day, we didn't let tin-pot dictators push us around, she declared, cleaning her Smith & Wesson revolver at our kitchen table. This woman needs to be taught a lesson in American liberty. Please don't shoot the HOA president. I begged, only half joking. Nana just winked. The turning point came when we discovered we weren't the only victims. During an impromptu neighborhood barbecue held at Tom's house to avoid another unauthorized gathering fine, we learned the extent of Patricia's reign of terror. The Sharma family had been fined for cooking odorous ethnic foods that could be smelled from the street. The Wilsons' disabled son had been banned from using his therapeutic tricycle in their driveway because it was age-inappropriate equipment. The elderly Goldsteins had received violations for installing a temporary ramp when Mrs. Goldstein broke her hip. She targets newcomers and anyone who questions her authority, explained Diane Wilson. Once she decides you're an enemy, the fines never stop. Has nobody tried to vote her out? Sarah asked. Nervous glances were exchanged. The board elections are complicated, Tom explained. Somehow, Patricia always knows who voted against her, and then the retribution starts. That's voter intimidation, I said, shocked. It's Patricia, Tom shrugged helplessly. When we returned home, we found Nana in a state of cold fury. While we were gone, Patricia had entered our backyard to measure the fence height and had accidentally trampled Nana's heirloom tomato plants she brought to grow in our garden. That woman trespassed on your property, Nana said, eyes glinting dangerously. Where I come from, that's how you get a behind full of buckshot. I was trying to calm her down when my phone rang. It was Patricia, her voice sickeningly sweet. Mr. Reynolds, that eyesore Cadillac is still visible from Maple Street if someone stands on their tiptoes. I've arranged for it to be towed tomorrow morning. Consider this your final warning. Looking out the window at Nana's beloved car, I felt something snap inside me. You know what, Patricia? Do your worst. The next morning, a tow truck with Hollister Towing and Recovery emblazoned on the side pulled up to our house. The driver, who bore a striking resemblance to Dennis, smirked as he approached Nana's Cadillac with a chain. What he didn't know was that Nana was napping inside the car, her trusty revolver in her purse beside her. The stage was set for war. I was on a conference call in my home office when I heard the commotion. By the time I made it to the front door, an extraordinary scene was unfolding in our driveway. Nana had emerged from her Cadillac, all 5 feet 1 inch of her, silver hair gleaming in the morning sun, her revolver held steadily at her side, not pointed at anyone, but unmistakably present. The tow truck driver had his hands halfway raised, face pale beneath his baseball cap. "Young man," Nana was saying in the calm, measured tone she used when she was truly angry, "I believe you're attempting to steal private property. In most states, that's still a felony." Neighbors were emerging from their homes, drawn by the spectacle. Patricia arrived moments later, power walking down the sidewalk in her tennis whites, face contorted with indignation. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, stopping short when she noticed Nana's weapon. "Is that a gun?" "Dennis, Dennis." I stepped between them. "Patricia, your husband's company was about to tow a legally parked vehicle from private property without consent, with my grandmother inside it. That vehicle violates HOA regulations." Patricia insisted, though she kept a wary eye on Nana. The board voted. "Show me where I signed away my constitutional rights when I bought this house," I interrupted, "because unless that paperwork exists, you have no authority to remove private property from my driveway." Dennis arrived in his police cruiser, lights flashing. To his credit, he immediately recognized the legal quagmire. A police officer authorizing his own company to tow a vehicle with someone inside it could end very badly for everyone involved. "Patricia, let's discuss this another time," he muttered, trying to guide his wife away. But Patricia was beyond reason. "Either that car goes, or you go," she shrieked at me. "I'll have the HOA place a laying on your house. I'll make your life miserable. No one defies the bylaws in my neighborhood." In that moment, as neighbors gathered and whispered, as Patricia's face turned an alarming shade of purple, as Dennis looked increasingly uncomfortable in his uniform, I made a decision. "You know what, Patricia? My family has been here 3 months, and you've already made our lives miserable. But that ends today." I turned to the assembled neighbors. "I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting. Tonight, 7 o'clock. My backyard. Everyone is invited. You can't call a meeting. Only I can call meetings." Patricia sputtered. "Check the bylaws, Patricia. Any homeowner can call an emergency meeting with 24 hours notice. I'm giving everyone 10 hours, which is more than generous." As the crowd dispersed, Patricia jabbed a finger at my chest. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." But looking at my grandmother, who stood unwaveringly beside her beloved car, I realized Patricia was the one who had no idea what she'd started. Inside, I called Sarah at work. "Remember how you said we should just sell the house and move?" I asked. "I think I've got a better idea." That afternoon, I made 3 important calls. One to a lawyer specializing in HOA disputes, one to my banker about the HOA's financial records, and one to a friend who worked at the county clerk's office. By evening, I had assembled a dossier that would change Pinewood Estates forever. As darkness fell, I set up chairs in our backyard, ignoring the violation I was surely accumulating for excessive outdoor furniture. Tonight, the fines wouldn't matter. Tonight, we were taking back our neighborhood. By 6:45 p.m., our backyard had transformed into an impromptu town hall. Nearly every household in Pinewood Estates was represented. Some neighbors I'd never even met before were arriving with folding chairs and determined expressions. Tom had brought a portable projector, and Diane Wilson was distributing homemade cookies that definitely violated the no food distribution without prior approval bylaw. Nana held court near the refreshment table, regaling wide-eyed neighbors with stories of her morning standoff. I noticed she'd accessorized her floral blouse with a stars and stripes scarf that perfectly matched the holster partially visible beneath her cardigan. At precisely 7 o'clock, Patricia and Dennis arrived, flanked by the other 4 HOA board members, all friends of Patricia who'd held their positions unchallenged for years. They remained standing at the back, Patricia's arms crossed tightly over her chest. "This meeting is unauthorized," she announced. "Any business conducted here is invalid under HOA bylaws." I smiled pleasantly. "Actually, Patricia, I've been studying those bylaws very carefully. Section 8, Paragraph 4 states that any homeowner may call an emergency meeting with sufficient notice, which I provided. Now shall we begin? Using Tom's projector, I displayed the agenda on the side of our garage. Financial audit of HOA funds, review of violation procedures, vote of no confidence. Patricia's face paled visibly at the first item. For those who don't know me, I'm Alex Reynolds. My family moved here 3 months ago, and in that time, we received 17 violation notices totaling $2,750 in fines. At first, I thought we were just unlucky, but looking around, I see we're not alone. Heads nodded throughout the crowd. Today, I'd like to share some information about how our HOA fees are being spent. I clicked to the next slide, displaying a financial statement obtained from my banker friend. Pinewood Estates collects approximately $432,000 annually in dues and fines. According to the official budget, this money goes toward landscaping, community improvements, and administrative costs. I clicked again. However, the actual expenditures tell a different story. Over $150,000 last year went to Hollister Towing and Recovery for enforcement services. Another $95,000 went to HPA Security, which upon investigation appears to be a company registered to Patricia's sister. And most concerning, $75,000 was paid to a landscaping company that, according to county records, doesn't actually exist. Murmurs swept through the crowd. Dennis was whispering urgently to Patricia, whose face had gone from pale to ashen. Additionally, I continued, while our bylaws state that all contracts must be put through a competitive bidding process, there's no evidence this has happened in the past 5 years. The next hour unfolded like a courtroom drama. Neighbors stood up one by one to share their experiences, the arbitrary fines, the selective enforcement, the retribution against anyone who questioned authority. The Goldsteins tearfully described having to move Mrs. Goldstein to a nursing facility because they couldn't legally install the necessary accessibility modifications to their home. Through it all, Patricia remained stunningly silent, though her hands shook visibly. When everyone had spoken, I stood again. I believe we have grounds to dissolve the current board immediately. Furthermore, I've consulted with an attorney who specializes in HOA disputes. He believes we have sufficient evidence to pursue legal action against board members for breach of fiduciary duty and possible misappropriation of funds. Patricia finally broke her silence. You can't prove anything. Dennis, tell them they can't do this. Dennis, looking increasingly uncomfortable in his uniform, stepped away from his wife. Patricia, I think we should leave. She rounded on him. Coward. After everything we've built. The final blow came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman who rarely spoke at meetings, stood up shakily. 3 years ago, my cherry tree was cut down while I was visiting my daughter. Patricia said it violated height restrictions. That tree was planted when my husband and I moved here 40 years ago. Her voice trembled. I have never said anything because I was afraid, but I am not afraid anymore. As if a dam had broken, more stories poured out. Petty acts of vengeance against homeowners who had crossed Patricia over the years. By meeting's end, we had voted 43-6 to remove the entire board and established an interim committee to review all bylaws and financial records. Patricia and Dennis slipped away during the voting, but not before she fixed me with a look of pure hatred. This isn't over, she mouthed silently. She was right about that. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next morning brought an eerie silence from the Hollister household across the street. No violation notices appeared in our mailbox or on our door. Patricia's usual 7 a.m. power walk didn't materialize. Even Dennis's police cruiser was conspicuously absent from their driveway. They're planning something, Nana predicted grimly over breakfast, buttering her toast with unnecessary force. Snakes like that don't just slither away quietly. She was right, of course. By noon, the neighborhood group chat was buzzing with alarming news. Patricia had filed an emergency injunction with the county court, claiming our meeting was procedurally invalid and that I had incited neighborhood unrest with baseless accusations. More worrying, Dennis had apparently been making calls from the police station, and several neighbors reported unmarked cars slowly driving past their homes, taking photographs. Intimidation tactics. Tom explained when he came over to show us the legal notice Patricia's lawyer had taped to his door. She's trying to scare people back into line, but Patricia had miscalculated badly. The very public nature of her counterattack galvanized the neighborhood in a way that private grievances never could. Within hours, a defense fund had been established, with nearly every household contributing. The Goldstein's son, a partner at a prestigious law firm in the city, volunteered his services pro bono. Even Mrs. Chen, living on a fixed income, insisted on contributing her Cherry Tree Revenge Fund of $500 she'd been saving for years. By late afternoon, our kitchen had become command central for what the neighbors were now calling the Pinewood Rebellion. Sarah took a rare day off work to coordinate our legal response, while I met with 3 different HOA board members who had approached me privately, wanting to make deals in exchange for information. The most damning revelation came from Marcus Johnson, the board's treasurer, who arrived carrying a USB drive and looking nervously over his shoulder. "I never saw the actual books," he confessed, sweat beading on his forehead. "Patricia handled all the finances. I just signed what she put in front of me, but I made copies of everything, just in case, for my own protection. The files on the drive were a gold mine. Falsified invoices, duplicate payments to shell companies, even doctored meeting minutes retrospectively approving expenditures. Most damning was an email exchange between Patricia and Dennis discussing how to use HOA funds to finance a vacation home in Florida, disguised as a community investment property. But Patricia wasn't going down without a fight. That evening, as our impromptu war council was wrapping up, the doorbell rang. A process server handed me a thick envelope. Patricia was suing me personally for defamation, seeking $2 million in damages. "She's trying to bankrupt you," Sarah said, scanning the document with horror. "Even if you win, the legal fees could ruin us." I felt a moment of real fear. We'd sunk every penny into this house. If we lost it because of this fight— Nana, who had been quietly listening all day, patted my hand. "Don't you worry about money," she said firmly. "Your grandfather didn't just leave me that Cadillac. He also left me what he called his Fight the Bastards Fund, $300,000 in treasury bonds, untouched for 40 years. I've been waiting for a worthy battle." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from an unknown number, with a single video attachment. With growing dread, I pressed play. The video showed Dennis in uniform, placing something in our mailbox late at night. The timestamp indicated it was from the previous week, the day before we'd received a violation notice for improper mailbox use. The accompanying message read, "Hollister has been planting violations for years. I have more videos. Meet tomorrow." It was signed simply, "A Friend in Blue." Another officer, apparently, had been watching Dennis's activities with concern. As I showed the video to our group, a slow smile spread across Sarah's face. "I think," she said, "we just found our smoking gun." Across the street, lights blazed from the Hollister house late into the night. Through the windows we could see Patricia pacing, gesticulating wildly as she spoke on the phone. The queen was cornered, but she still had pieces on the board. What none of us realized was that she was about to make her most desperate and dangerous move yet. The next morning dawned with an oppressive stillness in the air, the calm before an inevitable storm. Our meeting with the mysterious Friend in Blue was set for noon at a coffee shop downtown, safely outside Patricia's sphere of influence. As I was leaving, Nana announced she'd be staying home. "My hip's acting up," she said, though I noticed she moved with unusual ease as she settled into the Cadillac parked in our driveway. "Think I'll just rest in my car for a bit. The leather seats help my arthritis." I knew better than to argue with Nana when she had that determined glint in her eye. "Just be careful," I said, kissing her cheek. She patted her purse meaningfully in response. The meeting downtown was revelatory. Our Friend in Blue turned out to be Officer Rodriguez, a recent transfer to the precinct who had grown increasingly concerned about Dennis's activities. She provided us with a thumb drive containing dozens of videos showing Dennis and Patricia engaged in systematic harassment of homeowners, planting violations, tampering with property, even slashing garden hoses and blaming it on neighborhood vandals. I tried reporting it internally, Rodriguez explained, but Dennis has too many friends in the department. When I heard about your stand against them, I knew it was time to come forward. Armed with this new evidence, our lawyer was confident we had enough to not only win our case, but potentially pursue criminal charges. As we were leaving the cafe, my phone rang. It was Tom, his voice tight with panic. You need to get back here now. Patricia's gone nuclear. I broke every speed limit racing home. As I turned onto our street, the scene that greeted me was chaos. 3 tow trucks bearing the Hollister Company logo were parked along the curb. A small crowd of neighbors had formed a human chain around not just Nana's Cadillac, but every car parked on the street. Patricia stood in our driveway, brandishing what appeared to be official documents, while Dennis tried ineffectually to disperse the crowd. And at the center of it all, sitting regally in her Cadillac with the windows rolled up and doors locked, was Nana. I abandoned my car halfway down the block and ran to the scene. Sarah met me halfway, her face flushed with anger. She got a judge to sign emergency removal orders for abandoned vehicles on the street, Sarah explained rapidly. She's claiming every car that hasn't moved in 24 hours is abandoned and subject to immediate towing. That's insane, I said. Half these people are just home for the weekend. It gets worse. She's also served everyone in the human chain with trespassing notices. Dennis is threatening arrests. I pushed through to where Patricia stood triumphantly waving her papers. This is private property, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. You have no right. I have every right. Patricia's voice had taken on a shrill, almost manic quality. The judge signed the orders. These vehicles are in violation of city ordinances. Dennis, do your job. Dennis looked torn, shifting uncomfortably in his uniform. Patricia, maybe we should just. Trespassers will be arrested, she screamed, spittle flying from her lips. I want them all arrested. The neighbors held firm, linking arms more tightly. Mrs. Chen, her tiny frame barely reaching the shoulders of those beside her, stood directly in front of the tow truck aimed at her ancient Honda. You will have to move me first, she declared. One of the tow truck operators approached Nana's Cadillac, chain in hand. Through the window, I could see Nana calmly watching the proceedings, her hands folded in her lap, though her purse sat open beside her. Ma'am, the operator called, tapping on the window. You need to exit the vehicle. It's being towed. Nana smiled pleasantly and turned her hearing aid up in an exaggerated gesture. The operator tried the door handle, found it locked, and looked questioningly at Dennis. Break it open if you have to, Patricia commanded. That was when Officer Rodriguez arrived, her police cruiser cutting through the chaos with lights flashing. She was not alone, accompanied by a man in a suit who moved with the unmistakable authority of superior rank. Captain Lewis, Dennis stammered, suddenly standing at attention. I didn't expect. Clearly, the captain said dryly, surveying the scene. Officer Hollister, please explain why you're threatening to arrest citizens for standing on a public sidewalk. Dennis's explanation was cut short when Patricia thrust her papers at the captain. I have removal orders signed by Judge Harmon. These people are obstructing official business. Captain Lewis examined the papers briefly, then handed them to Rodriguez with a significant look. Judge Harmon retired 2 months ago. This signature is not his. A hush fell over the crowd. Furthermore, Lewis continued, I've just come from a very interesting meeting with Internal Affairs regarding Officer Hollister's potential conflicts of interest in enforcing HOA regulations that financially benefit his private business. Dennis's face drained of color. Sir, I can explain. I'm sure you'll have ample opportunity to do so. The captain turned to Rodriguez. Officer, please secure those documents as evidence. Patricia seemed to physically deflate, her moment of triumph evaporating before our eyes. This is harassment, she whispered, though the fire had gone out of her voice. You can't do this to me. I built this neighborhood. Actually, Mrs. Hollister, Rodriguez said as she collected the falsified court orders, based on the evidence we've received, you may want to contact an attorney. There will likely be charges. As if on cue, 3 more police cars turned onto our street. This time, they weren't coming for the neighbors. In the stunned silence that followed Patricia and Dennis being escorted to separate police cars, read their rights, and driven away, Nana finally emerged from her Cadillac, looking remarkably pleased with herself. "Well," she said, smoothing her cardigan, "that was more exciting than bingo night." The weeks following what became known as the Pinewood Coup were filled with revelations that shocked even those of us who had been Patricia's most vocal critics. Forensic accountants discovered that over 7 years, Patricia had embezzled nearly $600,000 from HOA funds through her network of shell companies and fraudulent contracts. Dennis had used his position to intimidate homeowners and cover up their activities, going so far as to falsify police reports about suspicious characters near the homes of those who questioned Patricia's authority. The investigation expanded beyond Pinewood Estates when records showed similar patterns in 3 other communities where Patricia had previously served on HOA boards. Class action lawsuits were filed, restitution ordered, and eventually, both Hollisters accepted plea deals rather than face public trials. Through it all, our neighborhood underwent a remarkable transformation. The interim committee, led by Tom and Mrs. Chen, methodically reviewed every bylaw, eliminating the most restrictive and arbitrary rules. The absurd fines were abolished, replaced with a simple system of courtesy notices and community service options for actual violations that affected safety or property values. Best of all, the recovered funds were channeled into genuine community improvements. The Goldsteins received the first grant from the newly established Accessibility Fund to modify their home so Mrs. Goldstein could return from the nursing facility. Mrs. Chen's cherry tree spot received a new sapling in a community planting ceremony that brought tears to her eyes. Our house, once the neighborhood pariah under Patricia's reign, became something of a community hub. The excessive outdoor furniture we've been cited for now hosted monthly cookouts where neighbors who had lived beside each other for years finally became friends. Nana extended her visit indefinitely, appointed by unanimous vote as the Pinewood Elder Advisor to the new board. Her Cadillac occupied a place of honor at community events, and no one dared suggest it violated any aesthetic standards. 6 months after the showdown, as autumn painted the neighborhood in gold and crimson, we held the first ever Pinewood Festival on the Common Green. Children played freely on lawns once forbidden to them. Gardens bloomed with vegetables and flowers in glorious, unregulated variety. Basketball hoops and bird feeders appeared like mushrooms after rain. As I watched Nana holding court among a group of admirers, recounting yet again her version of the great Cadillac standoff, which grew more dramatic with each telling, Sarah slipped her arm through mine. "Remember when you said moving here was a mistake?" she asked, leaning her head on my shoulder. I laughed. I believe my exact words were, "This place is a totalitarian hellscape disguised as a suburb." And now? I looked around at our neighbors, the Sharmas bringing out platters of fragrant biryani without fear of odor violations, the Wilson boy racing his therapeutic tricycle to delighted applause, Tom and his partner finally holding hands publicly after years of Patricia's thinly veiled homophobic family values rhetoric. "Now," I said, "it feels like home." Later that evening, as the festival wound down and neighbors drifted home with leftovers and new friendships, I found Nana sitting on our porch swing, watching the sunset with a contented smile. "You know," I said, joining her, "you never did tell me why you were napping in your car that morning." Nana's eyes twinkled mischievously. "Napping? Who said anything about napping? I saw that woman inspecting my caddy the day before, measuring it like it was an eyesore. I knew she was up to no good. So you were, what? Lying in wait." She patted my hand. "In my day, we called it a stakeout. Your grandfather and I watched a lot of Columbo." I laughed. "You're something else, Nana." She nodded toward the former Hollister house, now occupied by a young family with twins. "Sometimes people forget that us old folks have seen more battles than they can imagine. That Patricia woman thought she was tough." Nana scoffed. "I lived through rationing, the Cold War, and disco. I wasn't about to let some HOA Karen steal my Cadillac." As darkness fell over Pinewood Estates, porch lights winked on one by one. no longer regulated to Patricia's approved wattage and tint. Somewhere, a wind chime tinkled in defiance of noise ordinances passed. Children's laughter echoed down the street well past the old quiet hours, and in our driveway, Nana's Cadillac gleamed under the stars, a battle-worn monument to the day our neighborhood remembered what community really means. Note, this story is fictional and created for entertainment purposes only. Any resemblance to actual HOAs, living or defunct, is purely coincidental. Always resolve HOA disputes through proper legal channels, preferably without armed octogenarians.